Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! Innocent in its presence, the dark accessory lay on the pale bathroom countertop, akin to a mysterious stranger amidst a pure white snowfield. Pulling back from the choker's enigmatic allure, her roughened fingers, adorned by the patina of artistic creation, gently caressed the cloth, tracing its outline. The urgent need for a costume rattled her, with the Halloween bash's strict, inventive attire-only policy looming over her like an ominous specter. Stepping into the room, Brantley's companion's footsteps announced her presence. A svelte creature with chocolate-hued tresses, haphazardly secured in a bun, she surveyed the scene, her coffee-filled mug releasing a wisp of steam. "Can I borrow this, Vanessa?" she inquired, eyeing the accessory. The request triggered a response. "For your outfit? Do tell. What's the persona for the evening?" A moment's thought, then the response. "The embodiment of defiance. A punk rock star. You know, like Billy Idol or something." Brantley shrugged, running a hand through his short brown hair. Vanessa laughed, the sound echoing against the bathroom tiles. "Sure, go for it. It might be a little tight, though." "I'll be careful with it." Brantley fastened the choker around his neck, surprised at how natural it felt against his skin. Not constricting, but present, a gentle pressure that was oddly comforting. "Looks good," Vanessa remarked, taking a sip of her coffee. "Actually, it suits you." That night at the party, amid the chaos of monsters, superheroes, and various pop culture references, Brantley received more compliments on his simple punk rocker costume than expected. The black velvet choker became a conversation starter, drawing attention to his face in a way that made him feel seen differently. "Dude, you actually pull that off!" his friend Mark commented, beer in hand. "The whole vibe works for you." By the time they returned home, the choker had become comfortable enough that Brantley almost forgot it was there. He carefully removed it before bed, placing it on his nightstand rather than returning it to Vanessa's jewelry box. Morning light filtered through half-closed blinds. Vanessa had left early for her weekend shift at the hospital. Brantley stretched, his gaze landing on the choker. Without fully processing the impulse, he picked it up and fastened it around his neck again, studying his reflection in the bedroom mirror. Something was missing. The choker looked out of place with his plain white t-shirt and boxers. His eyes drifted to Vanessa's open closet door, then to the plaid mini-skirt hanging from a hook on the back. The thought came unbidden. What if? Heart racing, Brantley crossed the room and took the skirt from its hanger. He'd never worn anything like it before. Holding it against his waist, he studied his reflection.
"This is stupid,"
he muttered, but didn't put the skirt down. With a deep breath, he stepped into it, pulling it up over his boxers and adjusting it at his waist. The fabric felt foreign against his skin, light, airy, with a freedom of movement his jeans never offered. Turning to look at himself from different angles, Brantley was startled by the strange rightness of the image. The skirt hung a bit differently on his frame than it did on Vanessa's, but it didn't look wrong. His gaze shifted to the dresser, where Vanessa kept a pair of ripped fishnet stockings. The impulse grew stronger. "Just to see," he whispered to the empty room. The stockings were tricky to put on without tearing them further, but he managed, pulling them up under the skirt. Each new addition transformed him incrementally, creating someone he didn't recognize but somehow knew. A cropped black tank top completed the basic outfit. Brantley stared at his reflection, mesmerized by the stranger looking back. The clothes revealed parts of his body he normally kept covered, the smooth skin of his stomach, the curve where his waist narrowed slightly, the shape of his legs through the patterns of the fishnets. The final touch was Vanessa's combat boots, slightly too small, but wearable. When he stood before the full-length mirror again, the transformation hit him with full force.
Molly,
He whispered to his reflection, the name emerging without thought. The person in the mirror wasn't Brantley anymore. Marley stared back, defiant, punk, feminine in a way that felt unforced and natural. For 3 hours, Marley existed in the safety of the apartment, walking differently, moving differently, feeling differently. Only the sound of Vanessa's key in the lock broke the spell. In a panic, the clothes came off, hidden away as if they'd never been disturbed. The choker, however, remained on the nightstand. Brantley's fingers itched to put it on again.
how was work?
He asked when Vanessa entered, his voice sounding strange to his own ears, as if Marley lingered somewhere in his throat. Exhausting, she sighed, collapsing onto the bed.
But I'm off for the next 3 days. Thank God.
Brantley nodded, already calculating when he might have the apartment to himself again. The opportunity came faster than expected. 2 days later, Vanessa left for a day-long shopping trip with her sister. The moment the door closed behind her, Brantley moved with purpose toward her closet. This time, he took more care. He selected a different outfit, a burgundy skirt that flared more than the plaid one, paired with the same fishnets, and a fitted black sweater that clung to his chest and shoulders in a way that emphasized their breadth, while somehow making them appear more feminine. The choker went on last, completing Marley's emergence.
Hello again.
He whispered to the mirror. This time, Marley ventured further. She played with Vanessa's makeup, inexpertly applying eyeliner and lipstick. The results were messy but transformative. With each application, Brantley faded further into the background, and Marley grew more solid, more real. Music blasted through the apartment speakers, punk and riot girl bands that matched Marley's aesthetic. She danced without self-consciousness, experiencing the music through her body in a way Brantley never had. When Vanessa returned hours later, laden with shopping bags, she found Brantley on the couch playing video games, all evidence of Marley carefully erased. But something had shifted permanently. These secret transformations continued for weeks. Brantley carefully noted Vanessa's schedule, creating pockets of time for Marley to exist. Each session grew longer, more elaborate. He ordered his own clothes online, having them delivered to a pickup location. Clothes that were definitively Marley's, not borrowed from Vanessa. The first purchase was a wig. Warm brown hair that fell in soft waves past his shoulders. The difference was immediate and profound. With the wig, Marley became complete. Her reflection made perfect sense in a way Brantley's never had. The choker remained her signature piece, the bridge between her two selves. Even on days when Brantley had to exist in the world, the choker sometimes went with him, hidden beneath collared shirts, a secret talisman. At home, Marley practiced speaking in a higher register, developed her own distinctive walk, refined her makeup skills through countless YouTube tutorials. Sometimes she'd sit for hours just existing as herself, reading or watching TV, doing ordinary things that felt extraordinary when done as her authentic self. The only problem? Marley existed only within the walls of the apartment, only when Vanessa was absent. The double life grew increasingly difficult to maintain. "You've been different lately," Vanessa remarked one evening as they ate takeout on the couch. Distracted. Brantley swallowed hard. "Just work stress." he lied, acutely aware of the velvet choker hidden in his bedside drawer. Is it something else? Vanessa pressed, setting down her carton of noodles. You can tell me anything. You know that, right? The moment hung between them, pregnant with possibility. Brantley's heart raced. The words formed in his mind. I've discovered something about myself. There's someone else living inside me. Her name is Marley, but fear closed his throat, and the moment passed.
I know,
he said instead.
It's nothing, really.
That night, after Vanessa fell asleep, Brantley lay awake staring at the ceiling, feeling the phantom pressure of the choker around his neck. The double life was becoming unbearable, not because he wanted to stop being Marley, but because he wanted to be Marley more often, more openly, more honestly. The next day, browsing social media during lunch, a post caught his attention. An underground music venue was hosting a punk showcase that weekend. The text specified all identities welcome and featured photos of a diverse crowd from previous shows. An idea formed. A wild, terrifying, exhilarating idea. Vanessa would be working a night shift that Saturday. The timing was perfect. The days leading up to Saturday passed in a blur of anticipation and terror. Brantley prepared meticulously, assembling Marley's most perfect outfit, a dark purple skirt with metal studs along the hem, the familiar ripped fishnets, a vintage band t-shirt cropped just above the navel, and the combat boots he'd finally purchased in his own size. The brown wig was carefully brushed and styled, the makeup laid out with precision, and at the center of it all, the black velvet choker, Marley's true first piece, her origin point. When Saturday arrived, Brantley's hands trembled as he transformed. Each step of the process felt weighted with significance. This wouldn't be like the other times, safe within the apartment walls. Marley was stepping into the world. You can do this, she told her reflection when the transformation was complete. Her voice came out steady, warm. Marley's voice, not Brantley's. The Uber ride to the venue was the first hurdle. Marley sat rigidly in the back seat, heart pounding, waiting for the driver to say something, to question her. But he merely confirmed the destination and drove in silence, the radio filling the space between them. The venue was in a converted warehouse, its exterior covered in murals and band posters. A line had already formed outside, people in various punk and alternative styles chatting animatedly. Marley joined the end of the line, keeping her eyes down, clutching her small purse like a lifeline. First time here? The voice came from behind her, a person with a green mohawk and multiple facial piercings. Marley nodded, her throat dry. Is it that obvious? They laughed. Only because you look like you're about to bolt. Relax. This place is cool. Nobody judges. The line moved forward, and soon Marley was paying the cover charge and receiving a stamp on her hand. The interior was dim, illuminated by colored stage lights and strings of bulbs along the exposed ceiling beams. The first band was already playing, their sound raw and energetic. The crowd moved as one organism, some dancing, others nodding along at the edges. Marley found a spot near the back wall, content at first just to observe, to exist in this space as herself. She ordered a drink from a passing server, surprised at how naturally the interaction went. No double takes, no questioning glances. As the music continued, something within her unwound. The constant vigilance, the fear of discovery, it began to dissolve in the encompassing sound, the darkness, the collective energy of the crowd. You look like you'd appreciate the next band. A woman with half her head shaved and the other half dyed bright red appeared beside Marley, offering a friendly smile. They've got a female vocalist who'll blow your mind. I'm just getting to know the scene, Marley admitted. Fresh blood! We love to see it! I'm Diane. Marley. The name flowed from her lips without hesitation, without the sense of play acting that sometimes accompanied it when she spoke it alone in the apartment. Here, in this dark, vibrant space, Marley felt more real than she ever had.
Well, Marley, your whole vibe is killer. Especially that choker. Very 90s riot girl. Marley's hand went to her throat, fingers brushing the velvet band. Thanks. It's special to me. The best accessories always tell a story, Diane replied with a knowing nod. Come on, let's get closer to the stage. The next set is about to start. Following Diane through the crowd, Marley felt a surge of belonging. For the first time, she was moving through the world as herself, being seen as herself. The sensation was intoxicating. The next band was indeed fronted by a fierce vocalist who commanded the stage with raw power. Marley found herself jumping and dancing alongside Diane and a growing group of people who had naturally coalesced around them. Sweat beaded on her forehead, some of her carefully applied makeup surely smudging, but she couldn't bring herself to care. This was freedom. This was authenticity. When the band finished their set, Marley's ears rang with the aftermath of the sound. The group she'd been dancing with invited her to join them at a nearby table, and she accepted, sliding into the casual camaraderie with surprise at her own ease. So, are you new in town? Or just new to the scene? A guy with sleeve tattoos asked. Neither, actually, Marley admitted. I've lived here for years. I just haven't been out much as myself. Understanding nods circled the table. No further explanation needed. Well, welcome to the land of the living, Diane said, raising her glass. To Marley! The others joined the toast, and Marley felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She'd expected, at best, to blend anonymously into the crowd. She hadn't dared hope for acceptance, for inclusion. The night continued, a whirlwind of music, conversation, and unprecedented freedom. Marley exchanged numbers with several people, promises to meet at future shows exchanged with genuine enthusiasm. When she finally left the venue in the early hours of the morning, the cool night air felt different against her skin, like it was touching the real her for the first time. The Uber driver who took her home was different from the one who had brought her, but the experience was the same. A simple transaction, no questioning glances, no moment of being seen as anything other than who she presented herself to be. Back in the apartment, Marley stood before the mirror, taking in her smudged makeup, her disheveled wig, the slight tear in her fishnets from dancing. She looked lived in, authentic. Not a costume, not a secret identity, but herself. The thought of removing the clothes, the wig, the makeup, of putting Marley away, suddenly seemed impossible. The double life she'd been leading wasn't sustainable, not anymore. Not now that she knew what it felt like to exist freely as herself. I can't go back, she whispered to her reflection, fingers tracing the velvet choker. Instead of changing, Marley curled up on top of the covers, still fully dressed, and fell into an exhausted sleep. She would face the questions, the explanations, the uncertain future when Vanessa returned. For now, she needed to hold on to this feeling of wholeness, of coming home to herself.
The sound of keys in the lock woke her. Sunlight streamed through the windows. She'd slept later than intended. Panic fluttered in her chest, but she took a deep breath and remained where she was. No more hiding. Vanessa's footsteps paused in the bedroom doorway. A sharp intake of breath.
Brantley?
Marley sat up slowly, smoothing down her skirt. The brown wig was askew. She adjusted it with trembling hands. Not exactly, she said softly. It's Marley. A long silence stretched between them. Vanessa's face cycled through confusion, shock, and something unreadable. How long? She finally asked, stepping into the room. Since the Halloween party, I think. The choker was the beginning. Marley touched the velvet band at her throat. But maybe longer than that. Maybe always. Vanessa sat on the edge of the bed, her movements careful, measured. You could have told me. I didn't know how. I was afraid. Of what I'd think. Marley nodded. Of losing you. Of not being understood. Of not understanding it myself. Vanessa reached out, her hand hovering in the air between them before gently taking Marley's. So, Marley, tell me about yourself. The simple acceptance in those words broke something open. Marley spoke without reservation, about the first time she tried on the skirt, about the name that came to her lips unbidden, about the nights spent practicing makeup and voice, about the music venue and the people who had welcomed her without question. I didn't know how much I was hiding from myself until I stopped, she concluded, wiping tears from beneath her smudged eyeliner. I don't want to go back to being him. I can't. Vanessa absorbed this, her expression thoughtful. There's a lot we need to figure out. Practically, emotionally, everything. But I want you to know something. She squeezed Marley's hand. I fell in love with who you are, not what you look like or what name you use. Relief flooded through Marley's body, making her lightheaded. You mean that? I do. It might take some adjustment, but we'll figure it out. Together. The following weeks were a period of transition, not just for Marley, but for everyone in her life. Some connections strained, others strengthened. Marley's parents struggled with the change, needing time and education. Her closest friends rallied around her with varying degrees of immediate understanding, but universal support. Work presented its own challenges. After careful consideration and consultation with HR, Marley came out to her colleagues. The company's response was better than she'd dared hope. Policies were already in place, the transition in records was smooth, and most coworkers made genuine efforts to use her new name and pronouns. Through it all, Vanessa remained her cornerstone, advocating fiercely when needed, providing quiet support always. 3 months after that first night at the music venue, Marley stood before the mirror in their bedroom, no longer seeing a stranger or a secret self, but simply herself. Her brown hair had grown out enough that she rarely used the wig anymore, preferring the authenticity of her own locks, styled in a feminine cut that framed her face. Her wardrobe had evolved from those first borrowed pieces to a cohesive collection that expressed her personal style. Edgy but elegant, punk influences tempered with feminine touches. The combat boots remained a staple, now scuffed from regular wear. And always, the black velvet choker encircled her throat, no longer borrowed, but a gift from Vanessa to mark the beginning of Marley's authentic life. Ready to go? Vanessa asked, appearing in the doorway. She wore a deep blue dress that complemented Marley's burgundy one. Almost. Marley applied a final touch of lipstick. Nervous. Don't be. The venue loves you, and your friends will be there. They were returning to the underground music club, where Marley had first stepped into the world as herself, but this time with a different purpose. Since that night, she had become a regular, forming connections with musicians and staff alike. When she'd shyly shared some of her poetry with the venue's manager, he had immediately suggested she perform at their monthly spoken word night. What if no one connects with what I have to say? Marley adjusted her choker, a habit she'd developed when anxious. Vanessa stepped behind her, meeting her eyes in the mirror. Your words matter. Your experience matters. Even if it reaches just one person, that's enough. The venue was more crowded than usual for the spoken word event. Marley recognized many faces. Diane, with her half-shaved head, now dyed purple instead of red. The tattooed guy from that first night, whose name she now knew was Ramon, and a dozen others who had become her community. When the host called her name, Marley approached the microphone with measured steps. The spotlight felt hot on her skin, the silence expectant. This piece is called Choker, she began, her finger unconsciously touching the velvet at her throat. The words flowed from her, poetry about transformation and authenticity, about the objects that become talismans, and the courage to step into one's truth. Her voice, once practiced in secret, now filled the room with confidence. When she finished, the silence held for a breath before applause erupted. Marley saw tears on some faces, recognition on others. She had been heard, understood. Returning to her seat beside Vanessa, heart full, Marley knew with certainty that she had found her way home, not to a place, but to herself. The journey hadn't been easy, and challenges remained ahead, but she moved forward now without disguise, the black velvet choker a reminder of where she'd begun and how far she'd come. The edgy, confident woman she was becoming grew stronger each day. Marley wasn't just a name anymore. It was her truth, lived openly, without apology. That was beautiful, Vanessa whispered, squeezing her hand. Marley smiled, feeling the gentle pressure of the choker against her skin. No longer a borrowed costume piece, but the first thread in the fabric of her authentic life. Thank you, she replied, the gratitude extending beyond the compliment, encompassing everything, the support, the love, the space to become herself. The evening continued, other performers taking their turn at the microphone. Marley listened, still aglow from her own moment in the spotlight, surrounded by a community that saw her for exactly who she was. Later, as they walked home hand in hand under the city lights, Marley reflected on the winding path that had led her here. From a borrowed choker to a fully realized self, the journey had been both harder and more beautiful than she could have imagined. Penny for your thoughts? Vanessa asked, her breath visible in the cool night air. Marley touched the choker at her throat, its velvet familiar against her fingertips. I was just thinking that sometimes the smallest things change everything. Like a choker? Like permission to be yourself. They continued walking, their steps in perfect rhythm, moving forward together into whatever came next. For Marley, wrapped in the certainty of her identity and the warmth of acceptance, the future had never looked brighter. The black velvet choker, once just an accessory borrowed for a costume, had become the thread that stitched together her fragmented self into something whole, something real. Marley wouldn't have it any other way.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!